Hey, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking our newly installed TypeORM and we're going to be taking our database and we are going to be writing some migrations in order to take our schema, our task and our task completion schemas and putting them into the database so we can actually start using them in our API. So let's jump right into it. We are actually in our database file with all of our config here, and we're going to see two new properties within this data source that we're going to start to populate today. One's already populated here, and you'll see that our migrations, we have these two files, entities and migrations. And so what we're going to do is we're going to first establish a new task entity. We'll call it task.entity. Actually, we can just call it, task.entity.ts. And let's come over and reference the docs on TypeORM itself. And what we'll do here is we'll just come over and we're going to have a task entity. It's going to implement task. And task is actually going to come currently from this is actually going to be coming from our routes. And let's go ahead and take these. We'll move these routes out in a bit. Because we don't want to have to refactor everything currently. And we're going to reference them from here. So they're in our source, they're in our routes, task.index. So we have our task. We are going to name our table task, unable to resolve. So we're actually going to re-add a couple new files or a couple new properties in our TS config, and it's going to be this emit decorator metadata, source map, and experimental decorators. We're going to turn those on and we'll see some of these errors go away. Another thing in here is we can do some additional wrapping and stuff like this to get, there's a couple ways to get these to work. But for now, because we know we're going to be migrating our database, we're just going to throw on, maybe it won't complain. Okay, so it's implementing task, and that is true. We're going to say that the UID does exist. And then what are our other properties within task? Come back over here to our index. You know what, before we forget, let's go ahead and check out, a new branch. So we're going to be adding TypeORM migrations. So that way we can save all of our changes. Okay, so we have a name on here as well. And so this is going to be a regular column. And that's going to be name, and that's going to be a string. And we're going to just come over here. And the way you can reference these is we can come over to the TypeORM docs. And there's one more extra thing, and that's our UID. I don't want them to start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I actually would rather just to be a complete unique identifier. And so there's our UID. You have our name here. And that looks good. That looks good right here. And so let's go ahead into our database and let's reference it. Let's import our entity, task entity, and let's go ahead and just name him here. So the cool thing about using TypeORM is we can actually take these entities now and it will automatically generate schema. And then as we change, because we're implementing the task, if we change properties in here, we will actually also have to add them to our entity. And then when we run our migrations, it will automatically pick up the schema changes to the database. So this is actually just really handy in keeping things in sync. So how do we actually get the TypeORM to generate our migrations for us, generate our schema? So I've went through the docs already, and I've added a couple new commands, a couple new scripts that we can run. So all of them, so just as a note, if we wanted to run these scripts directly as they list them here, these are going to be ran on our host container. So instead, just like our test, we are actually going to Docker compose, we are going to run these on our API container, each of these migrations. So we are going to run this TypeORM command, so we're just going to say, hey, every time I want to run this, there's this big command that you'll see from the TypeORM docs. We're going to run this command, and then we're going to pass it these properties here. And so these properties, this is going to be, we have three different types of files. One is going to be a generate, which is going to compare our database, which right now is empty, to our entity list. The next one, and it's going to generate schema. We'll see that in a second. The next one is going to be this run. So it'll take our unran migrations and we'll run them, and then we'll be able to revert. So let's just go ahead and take a trial run of this. So we're going to npm run migration generate. Then we're going to actually provide it the location of the full location of where we're going to put this. If we just put add task table, it's going to put it right in our parent directory here. So we're going to say source migrations, and then we're going to generate it. So this is going to spin up our Postgres instance, then run this command, compare what's in the database and our schemas. So we'll see here, it ran successfully, and now we have this this new schema here. So we'll see, it's going to be kind of complained about here. Let's do a quick double check. Yeah, we're looking good here. So our schema looks solid. And so let's actually go ahead and run this now. We can actually look at our database. I've got it loaded up already. You'll see that we already have this migrations table because we've ran TypeORM and we've ran this generate. It created this migrations table for us. So let's go ahead and actually run what we've made. Run this actual migration, I mean. So we'll see, it's selected. It said there is the one migration that was not ran. So no migrations are loaded in the database. One migration was found, and this is the one that's going to be executed. We'll see it down here that it was successful. So if we come in here and we refresh our tables, we'll see our new task table, and you can see that we have our migration actually added to our database. So in addition to this, let's go ahead and get our task completion schema and entity created. And so this one's going to actually be a little bit more complicated just because it is referencing another one. So we'll call this is going to be called task completion. And so it's task completion. Call task completion dot entity .ts. Let's go ahead and we'll copy some of these in, and let's make sure that we're referencing the right stuff here. So this is going to be copying task completion. This is the task completion entity, and we are going to have 3 fields, and they are going, so we do have a UID. Then we're going to have a task UID. And we'll also have a completed app. We won't have a name, but this will be a column that we'll want. And we're gonna have to actually go and reference some of these in the docs themselves. So let's go ahead and look at what type of relationship these are. So if we think about it, you'll actually specify on both entities, a task. One task will have many task completions, and so we're going to actually add that here. We're going to add a join. We'll see here. We're going to do one to many, and we'll want to see an example of this. So one to many. Let's import that type for us. And our task is going to have a one to many. And let's see if this is actually referencing this correctly. One to many, and it looks like we have a blank and this photo. So this is referencing that. That's correct. We do want to import our task completion entity. And then on the reverse side of this, we want to, so this actually looks pretty solid. Our photo goes to this, which would have the task itself. So let's go on to our entity side, and we are going to do a many to one here. And that is going to be many to one. And this looks solid. And we are going to import task entity. That looks correct. And we're gonna force that those are there. In addition to this, what we actually want to do within our types, so we can see our errors are gone. In our types themselves, let's go ahead and migrate, and then we'll modify our types. So add task table, we will source migrations, add task completion table. And so we'll go ahead and inspect these. So entity metadata, task entity completions was not found. Check if you specified the correct entity object. Okay, let's see where. So on the other side, we should have had completions. So this actually might be complaining already about this. And so let's just go ahead and do this. We're going to say this is an optional, and we're going to say the task itself is an optional here. We might also have to specify the UID that is being referred to. I see the photo and the users. Okay, that looks good. Let's see if this still is complaining. The other thing is we need to make sure that we're including it in our database so it knows about it. So let's try to run that one more time. And there we go. So that was probably it right here. This entity, all of our entities need to be included in this file. And eventually, if this gets really unwieldy, we could do some auto including, I think. But for now, we'll leave it as is. So let's see the different changes that this is actually making. So first, it's creating our task completion. This is very interesting. It's dropping our UID column and adding a UID, not null. And it's adding a primary key. Oh, Oh, we have migrated already. So let's go ahead and run these, and let's just do one check. We should see that nothing else. So test schema was ran. Okay, so no changes in the schema were found. We see both of our tables are now present. Task contains just the UID and the name. It's very interesting that our UID is now showing up after the fact, and I kind of wonder where our problem is coming from. So let's go to our task entity, and let's see. Oh, it's because we no longer have our UUID like we had specified before. And so we actually had dropped our UUID. And how does it look here? At some point this was removed. So we definitely don't want that. What we can actually do is we can test our revert functionality, drop the previous, and then generate, oh, we don't want test schema was ran. We can actually, since we've reverted this, we can drop that, and we can come back up. We can say add task completion table, and let's go ahead and check out what it's trying to generate now. Okay, this makes a lot more sense. So it's only creating our table, our task completion table, and it's altering our task completion table to add that reference, that task UID is referencing the task UID itself. So that looks good. All right, so we're completely migrated now. I think we will go ahead and we'll check out our changes. Things I think look pretty good here. We've seen everything. Do our test still run? We'll go ahead and try that out before we finish up today. And that's it. npm run test watch. Go into our API. npm run test watch. Do a quick double check. Cannot execute operation on default connection because connection is not yet established. That's because we're not supposed to run test watch, we're supposed to run test, and test watch will be ran within the container itself. And there we go. So our tests are still running. We are migrated. Really good news here. That's going to be it for today. In our next video, we now actually have our schema in our database. So we're going to actually start making these tests actually store stuff in the database. We're going to get our routes actually storing what they say they should be storing and get away from this hard coding idea. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me here.